Hey everybody, I just wanted to record a quick little tutorial for those of you who are either at home quarantining or even if you've been here in class and you want a quick little review about what we are completing or what you should have completed in your Zane and the Hurricane reading guide by this coming Friday or by the end of class Friday. So, the first page was that Introducing Hurricane Katrina page. We watched a video last week. We filled this out together in class. That should be completed. We went over those answers in class. So that should be a page that you don't even have to think about at this point. You do not have that page. The setting page is a page, big white page, empty, for you to draw a picture of the setting of what you imagine the setting to look like. It can be one picture, one drawing. It can be several different drawings, like before the flood, after the flood. It can be several different locations throughout the story because they do move locations. It cannot be a picture from the internet. It needs to be an original illustration. I'm not judging your artwork. I'm not judging that. I just want to see that you are making an effort to visualize and think about the setting. Don't forget to give it a title and or a caption so that if your drawing is not very clear, at least I know where and when this drawing is supposed to be as a part of the story. The Interpreting Figurative Language page, that's that idea of analyzing authors' craft and how authors write. At this point, by the end of the week, there have been a ton of similes in the story. We talked about a metaphor today at the very beginning of, I believe it was chapter 11. No. Yes, it was chapter 11. I did remember. So if you don't have a metaphor yet, go back and reread the first few lines of chapter 11, and there is a metaphor there. There has been a ton of personification in the story. There have been several hyperboles, crazy exaggerations. There have been idioms that we have read through in the story. We have not talked about euphemisms. When we get to euphemism in the stories next week or as we're reading, I will point that out. Foreshadowing, we talked a lot about that at the very beginning. The first few chapters had a lot of foreshadowing. We have not talked about symbolism. We'll get to that next week. We have seen several flashbacks in the story. And there have been some examples of irony, but we have not talked about irony yet. So don't worry about that if you don't understand it quite yet. But by the end of this week, you should have simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, idiom, foreshadowing, and flashback filled out on this chart. The page about dialect, you may not have it completely filled out, but by now we have met Miss Trissy, we have met True, and we've met Malvina, and all three of them speak with very rich dialect. So there's lots of examples of dialect. We even read one specifically in, I believe it was chapter 12 today, and we talked about a particular example of dialect that True then had to explain to Zane because he didn't understand what he was saying. So you can go back to page 60 and look at that if you need an example. But by the end of the week, you probably have had enough of the book read that you should be able to fill up the rest of that page with examples of dialect. And then today, Wednesday, we introduced this page. This page is very simple. We've already talked about imagery this school year. We've talked about how writers like to paint pictures in people's minds using the 5 senses. Rodman Philbrick, author of Zane and the Hurricane, uses a ton of imagery in describing what Zane is experiencing. Lots of sight imagery, a lot of sound. You may or may not have gotten an example of taste yet. Definitely touch and definitely some smell. So by the end of the week, you should have one example of each of those senses, descriptions of something in the story. All you have to do is copy the lines from the story and make sure you put the page number. And remember, if it's from the story and you're copying it, put in quotation marks. That way you're citing the source correctly. So that is what we have done so far in our reading guide. By the end of Class Friday, those pages should be pretty complete. Do not worry about the other pages in this yet. We have not gotten there. We will get to that next week. So just email me or Miss Reader if you have any questions, and we'll be glad to reach back out to you.